Math 1332, Section 3, Simple Interest. Video 1, Definitions. There's no calculations in this video, just introducing some terminology to you, most of which you may already be familiar with. We're going to be discussing investments and interest and what that means and all that. So let's get some definitions out of the way. Starting with the word interest. Interest, the fee charged for the use of money. Or another way of looking at it is it's what you're charged for the privilege of borrowing money, or what a bank pays you for the privilege of holding your money, which they loan out to other people and charge interest on. So interest works two ways. You can pay interest if you're borrowing money, or you can earn interest if you're investing money. When you're investing money, basically someone else is borrowing it from you and paying you interest. In fact, the way banks stay afloat is when they pay interest on money that people invest in them, they loan that money out at a higher interest rate. The difference between the rate they charge versus the rate they pay is part of how they make their money. Don't be mad though. It's great job if you can get it. If I could make money by loaning out, by people giving me money and me loaning it out and me keeping the difference in the interest rates, why not? I mean, as long as everybody agrees to it, that's the catch. If everybody's mutually agreeable to terms like that, then who am I to complain? Who are you to complain either, to be honest? All right, principal. We'll get to the asterisk in a moment. And yes, principal in this context is spelled with an A-L. I know that means the guy that runs the school because he's your pal, but in this context, it's also spelled with an A-L. The amount of money borrowed or placed into a savings account. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a savings account. It could be money that you borrowed on a credit card, money that you invest in a CD or an IRA or something. But it's basically the money in play. And the variable for interest is I, and the variable for interest is P. We are going to be using these variables quite a bit in the upcoming videos and in this section and the next section. Rate, also known as interest rate, the percent of the principal paid for having money loaned or earned for investing money. Unless indicated otherwise, rates are given as a percent for 1 year, so an annual interest rate. When doing calculations, we'll always write R in decimal form. The variable for interest rate is R. Time or term. The length of time that money is being borrowed or invested. When the rate is given in units besides years, time has to be converted to years, and the variable for that, of course, is T. And then future value. The amount of the loan or investment plus the interest paid or earned. In other words, if you invest money, what's it going to be worth in the future? Or if you borrow money, how much do you have to pay in the future? Future value. Now, the variable for future value is A, but, and this is the same asterisk as up there because these kind of go hand in hand. In some subjects like accounting or finance, sometimes future value is indicated as capital FV, which makes perfect sense. Future value, FV. When used, the principal is called the present value and indicated as PV. Several financial calculators use these variable names. So if you have a calculator that has an FV button and a PV button, then it is a financial calculator capable of calculating the future value of an investment or the present value if you need to know if you need a certain future value in the future. But to be consistent with the online homework, I will be using A for future value. I suspect that it's short for future amount, but I wasn't there when that decision was made. Let's take a look at one quick example where we're going to identify the interest, principal, rate, term, and future value. And just to summarize, principal is how much you start with. Rate is the interest rate that you're going to be paid or that you're going to pay. Term is how long. Had my train of thought derail, so I'm just going to repeat what I just said. When you're investing or borrowing money, the principal is how much you either borrow or invest up front. The interest rate is the rate at which you're going to be paid interest. That's fairly self-explanatory. The term or time, is how long this investment is going on. Either how long you're going to invest the money or how long you're going to take to pay it off. The interest is how much money you earn or how much extra you have to pay during the investment or loan. And the future value is the total amount that you have in the future on your investment or the total amount that you pay. Didn't I already say that one? I might have. That's what happens when trains of thought get derailed. Anyway, let's identify the interest, principal, rate, term, and future value in this scenario. Don't worry about where the numbers came from. In the next video, we'll talk about calculating some of these things. Suzanne invested $5,000 in a bank at 4%. After 7 years, she had earned $1,400, bringing her total to $6,400. Let's start with the first number. Suzanne invested $5,000. Which number is that? Well, that's the amount that she started with at the beginning. That's the principal. Okay. What is our next number? 4%. That one's pretty easy to spot. The only number in our list of definitions that is a percent is the interest rate. So 4% is R. Now, it's not wrong to write 4%. But when we do calculations with percents, we don't use the percent form of the value. We use the decimal form of it. So it's perfectly acceptable, in fact preferred when you're doing calculations, to say that R is 0.04, obtained by moving the decimal point 2 places to the left, like you do anytime you convert a percent to a decimal. All right, let's take a look at the next number. After 7 years, this one's kind of a dead giveaway. That's the time of the investment, or the term, if you will. But regardless of whether you call it time or term, it is T. It is important to point out that T is always measured in years. So if it's given, if the time is given in a different unit of measurement, we will have to do some converting to convert it to years. Continuing, she had earned $1,400. What is that? The interest or the future value? Well, it better not be the future value, because if I'm investing money, I better get back more than I started with, or I hope. If I invested $5,000 and in 7 years you give me $1,400, I'm not too happy. $1,400 is the interest. That's how much you were paid to invest your money wherever you invested it. Because again, wherever you invested that money, in a bank or wherever, they loaned it out to other people and charged them interest, probably something like 12%. So the 12% minus the 4% is what they get, all for the privilege of you putting your money in there and getting a little bit later. Again, it's a mutually agreed upon deal between the investor and the bank, and between the bank and the person borrowing the money. So nobody really has any room to complain, because that's how banks run. Don't like it? Come up with a new system. I'd be more than happy to listen to it. All right, last number is a total of $6,400. That is the value of her investment in the future, which is why it is the future value. It is A. Now, needless to say, you're not always going to be given all 5 numbers. Usually the way it will go is you'll be given 3 of the numbers and asked to find a 4th one. Why not all 5 involved? Because if you think about it, look at the $3 amounts, the $5,000, the $1,400, and the $6,400. If you know 2, you can calculate the third. If my principal is $5,000 and my interest is $1,400, the sum is $6,400, that's the future value. If the future value is $6,400 and the principal is $5,000, the difference, $1,400, is the interest. If the future value is $6,400 and the interest was $1,400, the difference, $5,000, is the principal. So when it comes to the $3 amounts, you really only have to know 2, because you can always calculate the third. So if we just kind of ignore this part for a minute, there will be questions with future value, and think of this as 4 numbers somehow related to each other. Then most of the problems we'll see will give you 3 of the numbers and you have to find the 4th one. I challenge you to think where the $1,400 came from. It's not really that hard to see through if you're good at recognizing multiples of numbers. Like, well, let's see, $1,400 in 7 years, so divided by 7, $200 in 1 year. I wonder where that 200 came from. 4% of 5,000. In the next video, we'll talk about the formula for calculating simple interest.